The chair recognizes the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Gutierrez, for 5 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to honor a towering figure in Puerto Rican history and culture. Puerto Rico and the world lost a pioneering and leading scholar last week with the passing of Don Ricardo Alegria. Don Ricardo Alegria devoted his long life to the affirmation of Puerto Rican national identity and culture. His study of the history and culture of the Taino Indians of Puerto Rico was groundbreaking work. By helping Puerto Ricans to understand our Taino and African and European heritage, as well as many other important aspects of Puerto Rican history and culture, Don Ricardo helped us all to understand better who we are, where we came from, and why being Puerto Rican truly means. Don Ricardo Alegria was not only a scholar whose work was essential to Puerto Ricans' understanding of our history, he was a determined and proud man who refused to let our culture be forgotten and destroyed. He was the founder and executive director of the Instituto of Puerto Rican Culture and of many other important research, cultural, and educational institutions. In this role, he was a warrior defending our cultural heritage. It is not an exaggeration to say that without Don Ricardo's leadership and tenacity, the historic buildings and walls of Old San Juan, which are loved by Puerto Ricans and visited by tourists from around the world, may not be standing today. He led the fight to preserve Old San Juan and to make sure its historic significance was understood by all. Ricardo Alegria was an example of what makes us all so proud to be Puerto Rican. He looked to a better future while treasuring our past. He embraced what makes Puerto Ricans unique, and he understood that we have our own identity and we should never run away from it. We should celebrate it. And without history and without question, he loved our people and our history. I offer Don Ricardo Alegria my humble thanks and gratitude for his commitment to Puerto Rico, his leadership for our people, and the way he elevated our history and our culture. At this time of crisis for Puerto Rico, a time when many in power seem to have forgotten the traits that make us, make our island, and make our history, Don Ricardo was very supportive of my work in Congress. The inspiration of towering Puerto Rican figures like Don Ricardo motivate me to speak out on this floor and denounce attacks on the civil and human rights of Puerto Rico. These attacks come from the same quarters Don Ricardo fought all his life. They come from those who seek to destroy the national culture and identity of the island of Puerto Rico. And they have not succeeded and will never succeed, because there will always be Puerto Ricans like Don Ricardo standing defiantly, proudly, and courageously in their way. This fact was driven home right here in Congress just yesterday, Mr. Speaker, at a well-attended briefing conducted by the ACLU, the National Institute for Puerto Rican Latino Policy, and the Puerto Rican Legal Defense and Education Fund. As part of their briefing, these organizations showed a video depicting some of the many scenes of violence by the police of Puerto Rico against unarmed and peaceful protesters. I have seen this video, and I am certain that many members that see these images would be moved to indignation and action. That these scenes happen under the American flag and that these abuses are committed against American citizens is simply shameful. If any of my colleagues saw these images, I am sure they would feel the same indignation I felt when I saw them. Mr. Speaker, it is out of my deep concern for the people of Puerto Rico that I wish to inform my colleagues that I have sent a letter today to the Attorney General, Eric Holder. This letter requests the release of any and all documents and information regarding contacts by officials or representatives and lobbyists of the government of Puerto Rico with the U.S. Department of Justice and their Civil Rights Division into the very serious allegations of systematic police brutality in Puerto Rico, an investigation that is over 2 years old. I have requested this information under the Freedom of Information Act because public reports allege that the government of Puerto Rico is using its well-paid top Washington lobbyists and other resources to thwart the release of the Justice Department report. The reports are based on lobbying disclosure forms that do not give much detail on exactly what the lobbyists are doing for the government of Puerto Rico. Given the recent history of the ruling party in Puerto Rico trying to act with impunity and secrecy, these published reports have raised serious doubts in my mind. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to make it clear, while there may not be transparent and open government in Puerto Rico or a Freedom of Information Act there, as far as the federal government is concerned, the secrecy and the impunity of the regime in Puerto Rico ends here. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Kinzinger, for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Madam